Hello everyone and welcome to the round glass review for the Pentax SMC-M 50mm f1.4. Let's take apart what that name means. So Pentax is the company that made it, Asahi Optical Company, while Pentax is the brand. SMC equals super multi-coating. Now that's the 7-layer coating system used by Asahi Pentax at the time that they made this lens to improve overall light transmission and to reduce flare and ghosting in the final images. I did research what that coating is made up of, and Google AI tells me that it's beans, sour cream, guacamole, shredded cheese, tomatoes, olives, and scallions. The M is for the M series lenses, which were released with the M series camera bodies. They didn't try to hide that, I guess. The lenses were redesigns of the previous SMC lenses. In Pentax vernacular, the older lenses are called SMC, or SMC-K, though there is no designation of K on them. People just tend to call them SMC-K to separate them from this generation of lenses, because those older lenses arrived with the K lineup of cameras. This lens was released in 1977. Typical lens uses on full frame include general photography, narrow depth of field photos, and portraits, and low light photography such as at concerts. But as we'll discuss in this video, that's a really short selling of this lens, as the way that it creates photos can work across all manner of subjects and do so in a unique way each time. For your bottom line up front, this was the standard bearing 50mm lens for Pentax for a long time. This lens replaced the SMC version and made some minor adjustments to the optical design and element surface shapes. This optical design appears to have been retained for the A and F lenses and wasn't replaced until 1991 when the FA lens delivered a new and very slightly revised optical design. The design from 1991 that replaced this lens's design remains in production as of this video's recording in 2024 in the two Pentax HD and Classic lens offerings of this spec. Your focal length and AOV are 50mm and 46.8 degrees on full frame, 76mm and 31.6 degrees on aps-c, and oh, hey, check this out, a hair narrower than 39mm and 58 degrees on GFX. The aperture range is 1.4 through 22, element and group count are 7 and 6, design type double Gauss, filter size is 49mm, closest focus is 0.45 meters, which, in the US, is 1.75 guinea pigs plus the weight on your soul of what you had to do to get that partial guinea pig. Focus type is manual only. The native mount is Pentax K, the dimensions are 63mm by 37mm, and the weight is 235 grams. For photographers who like small lenses, compared to the lenses of the era, this is one of the smaller options. In fact, as we will see in a few short weeks when I compare 12 of these lenses of this spec in one mammoth showdown, only 4 of the comparable spec lenses of the era weighed less, and at least one of them was made of plastic. Also, only a few other lenses of the era were smaller in terms of overall cubic millimeters, and few had filters smaller than 49mm. For the GFX shooter, this lens will have a little image vignette in the corners at every aperture, but it can be a viable means of getting 2 f1.4 apertures in a small size if you're willing to crop your images just slightly. For the mirrorless shooter, a macro adapter is a double-bitted axe. Ultra-close images use the sharpest part of the lens's image area and spread it across the whole image frame. However, at the larger apertures, focusing beyond the design focus point introduces astigmatism. So just because this lens can be used for near macro work does not necessarily mean that it should be. Astigmatism blur can be largely mitigated by stopping down, but then you're going to need more light or much longer shutter times. We'll jump in today with the infinity focus photos of test lights, and we can see that the light's projection creates very strong cat eye projection. The lights, and this is especially noticeable in the white lights near the image center, also exhibit some spherical aberration over and under correction at the same time, as evidenced by the slightly bright perimeters and cores in those blurry lights. This is an effect that raw editing can exaggerate, and it will almost certainly not manifest for film shooters. Also note that it does not exhibit on the same lights near the perimeter, and the effect diminishes as the lights move away from the center, which indicates that there is some relationship here between focal distance, as the lights in these test shots are strung from behind to in front of the camera. So in general, the lights that are near the perimeter, especially as they're larger, are closer to the camera, and the lights that are in the center, especially as they get smaller, tend to be further away. The lights test shot now at the lens closest focus point shows similar performance, though with a smaller slice of the scene. The dots test chart shows very minor spherical aberration at the image center and immediately some coma forming as well. The overall sharpness is quite good with this lens resolving the pixels on my monitor. Sharpness with this lens is not an issue, though the very slight spherical aberration and coma will give the appearance of image softness when wide open. The corners exhibit strong coma effect and warping by projection angle. The overall performance from this lens is one that's uniform, and in the image character, especially wide open, will be well defined by the manner in which coma affects your image's blurry area. This will be most apparent in images with specular highlights that are out of focus and toward the image peripheries. Here's a pretty good example of a double gauze lens that incorporates many of the best of the era design approaches and practices. Overall, this is considered one of the better Pentax 50mm f1.4 lenses ever made, and the design provides a bit of an insight into how this lens performance was achieved. The other part of this lens performance comes from the coatings, which include a 7-layer coatings of materials, likely vaporized metals and other compounds, applied to each element in a vacuum chamber that reduce the light reflectance to 0.2% per surface. Flare and ghosting in images are the way that the light reflections on lens surfaces manifest in photos, and reducing that reflectance per surface means reducing flare and ghosting in images, and that's why the coatings on lenses are very important to their performance in terms of flare and ghosting. Breathing is noticeable in both video shifts and still shifts when focus is shifted from the closest focus point the lens can deliver of 0.45 meters to a focus point 0.7 meters further away. The aperture is stepped in half-stop increments from f2 through f16, with a full stop going from f1.4 to f2 and f16 to f22. The front element is non-rotating but does move in and out 7.5 millimeters, which is 15% of the lens focal length. The focus throw is approximately 210 degrees with a stationary and relatively wide focusing ring. Focus damping is nice, and the focusing ring movement is smooth and pleasant. The autofocus effect on audio is not applicable because this is a manual focus lens, though there are perceptible clicks at the hard stops of each end of the focus throw, and the aperture ring makes a very noticeable clicking noise when it moves. Sharpness is exceptional, especially in the central image area. For aps-c shooters, this lens will perform very well in this regard. For full-frame and GFX shooters, this is a very sharp lens with some areas that exhibit significant character. Build quality is, in keeping with lenses of the era, excellent. In general, the rubber grips on this generation and class of lenses from Pentax have also held up very well over time. Contrast from this lens is good, and raw files are readily editable and able to deliver images that have strong colors as well as striking tonality for black and white. Aperture stars begin to form pretty much immediately at f2 and strengthen from f2.8 to f8. At f8, the stars are arguably at their best, though at f11 the stars are likely to be their best balance between star points and light source focus and depth of field. Out-of-focus areas are largely defined by coma, and at the perimeters will deliver some noticeable swirliness, especially wide open. This effect extends for GFX users and will make this lens a solid option as a GFX format character lens with excellent sharpness at the image center. Distortion, even with the slight graph paper misalignment in this image, is noticeable and in the barrel direction. Light loss is apparent from f1.4 to f2.8, and then even and functionally non-existent for the balance of the aperture settings. In real-world use, light loss is noticeable and can either complement or distract from an image depending on the subject and framing. On GFX, the image circle falls a bit short of the GFX sensor size, and outside of the full-frame image area, the coma becomes a strong and defining characteristic of image quality. Flare and ghosting never appeared for me, and I also never used this lens with a hood. This is a testament to the coating quality and the benefit of the shape of the arc radii on the element surfaces that face the aperture. The balance with cameras is fine with film cameras of any weight, as well as mirrorless cameras of most any weight. I did find that when I shot this on a GFX 50S2 that the camera fell too back heavy for my taste. So for the something like 5 people planet-wide who plan to shoot this on GFX, just take note of that observation. The Pentax SMC-M 50mm f1.4 is a 35mm fast 50 standard lens with character. But what is character? As a word, it can have a great or a terrible connotation. A person with a lot of character would be upstanding, helpful, or similar concepts. A person who is a character may or may not, be likable. To that end, this lens sort of skates the line between both, but for me, is solidly more in the earlier camp. Pentax made, in the SMC-M 50mm f1.4, a stunningly good lens with exceptional technical performance in all the categories that matter, while also including just enough coma to keep the image quality interesting. So in creating this lens's character, Pentax also imbued it with an exceptional versatility. A versatile lens can capture many subject types, and that's a key requirement for a lens to be versatile. But beyond that, a lens can be versatile if it captures the same subjects in different ways, at different distances, apertures, or in different surroundings and settings. The Pentax SMC-M 50mm f1.4 lens does that to a degree greater than many other lenses because the image character is flexible and adaptable, depending on how this lens is used. And this is, I think, the best thing I can say about this lens. You can realistically use it for the majority of the work you do, and, if you so choose, rarely, if ever, capture the same type of subject or scene in the exact same way. Hey, and if you enjoyed this video, check out this other one you'll probably really like too.